A penniless kitchen assistant aboard a French merchant steamship was secretly carrying the blueprint to dismantle a global empire. To the French customs officers checking the crew manifest at Marseille in the autumn of 1911, this quiet, 21-year-old named Ba was just another disposable colonial laborer from Indochina. They had absolutely no idea that this anonymous galley hand would spend the next 3 decades evading secret police across 3 continents, adopting dozens of elusive aliases, and transforming himself into one of the most influential revolutionary icons of the 20th century. How did a young man working for pennies in the grease-slicked belly of a ship acquire the geopolitical leverage to challenge the world's most powerful empires? The answer lies in a remarkable, globe-trotting odyssey, driven by a single, burning question. How could the very nation that had colonized his homeland be defeated? Using its own intellectual weapons? This young traveler, born Nguyen Tat Tan, was not seeking personal fortune, academic prestige, or a comfortable life in the West. He had witnessed the systematic, tragic failure of every traditional resistance movement in his homeland, and he understood that the old ways of fighting were completely obsolete. The traditional scholars, relying on ancient Confucian ethics and outdated military tactics, had been easily crushed by the industrial and military might of the French Empire. To defeat the colonizers, he realized he had to study them from the inside out. He had to breathe their air, speak their language, read their books, and find the inherent contradictions within their own society. This realization launched a 30-year exile that would take him from the docks of Saigon to the capital, cities of the Western world, into the heart of global revolutions, and, eventually, to the pinnacle of world politics. He would work as a coal shoveler in London, a pastry chef in Boston, and a political organizer in Paris, all while maintaining a laser-like focus on his ultimate goal, the liberation of Vietnam. His departure was a quiet act of defiance that marked the beginning of a new era. As the steamship Amiral Latouche Treville pulled away from the harbor of Saigon on the 5th of June 1911, the young man watched the coastline of his homeland fade into the horizon, knowing that he might never return. The physical challenges of the voyage were immense. He spent his days in the dark, stifling, grease-slicked galley of the ship, performing backbreaking labor for meager wages. Yet, every spare moment was spent observing the French officers and passengers, studying their behavior and their attitudes toward colonial subjects. He was gathering his first raw data on the nature of European colonial power. To understand why this young man chose such an unprecedented and dangerous path, we must look at the grim reality of the world he left behind in 1911. By the early 20th century, French Indochina had been turned into a highly profitable, ruthlessly efficient economic engine for French investors, but it was a living nightmare for the vast majority of the Vietnamese people. The French colonial administration had systematically dismantled traditional village structures, replaced them with a brutal system of heavy taxation, forced labor, and state-controlled monopolies on daily essentials such as salt, alcohol, and opium. The colonial courts ruled with absolute authority, and any sign of dissent was met with immediate, violent retaliation. The Vietnamese people were treated as second-class citizens in their own ancestral land, stripped of their political rights, and forced to work under subhuman conditions to enrich a distant European power. Nguyen Tat Tan grew up in the heartland of this resistance in Nguyen province, a region famous for producing rebellious scholars and fierce patriots. His father, Nguyen Sin Sac, was a highly educated Confucian scholar who served briefly as a district magistrate. However, Sac became deeply disillusioned by the colonial administration's manipulation of the imperial court and resigned, teaching his children that serving the current government was a betrayal of the Vietnamese people. This domestic environment was a powerful breeding ground for political consciousness. As a student at the prestigious Quoc school in Hue, the young Than was exposed to both traditional Vietnamese patriotism and modern French ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He immediately noticed a glaring, painful contradiction. His French classroom teachers spoke eloquently of human rights and democratic values, while outside the school gates, French soldiers and administrators treated Vietnamese citizens like disposable subjects. The older generation of patriots offered two main paths of resistance, both of which Than found deeply flawed. Phan Boi Chau advocated for a military alliance with Japan, believing another Asian power could help drive out the Western colonizers. Than reasoned that relying on Japan was like letting the tiger in the back door while chasing the wolf out the front. Meanwhile, Phan Chau Trinh believed in working within the French colonial system to achieve gradual democratic reforms, an approach Than viewed as a naive fantasy. He realized that Vietnam needed a completely new strategy. He decided he must see the Western world for himself, to find the source of French power and turn it against them. He would not look to other Asian empires for salvation. He would go directly to the heart of the metropole to study machinery of Western dominance. The journey that began in Marseille quickly transformed into a global expedition of survival and intellectual growth. The young traveler did not remain in France for long. During his initial visit, he returned to the sea, working on various merchant vessels that took him to ports across Europe, Africa, and the Americas. He walked the streets of Boston and New York, working odd jobs, including a stint as a baker's assistant at the historic Parker House Hotel in Boston. In the United States, he observed the rapid rise of American industrial capitalism and the vibrant energy of its cities. He visited Harlem, where he witnessed the systemic racism and economic inequality faced by African Americans. Realizing that the struggle against oppression was not unique to Vietnam, he saw that the promises of American democracy did not apply equally to all its citizens, and this realization deepened his understanding of global inequality. By 1913, he had moved to London, a city wrapped in coal smoke and the center of the world's largest empire. To survive, he found work shoveling coal in the freezing basement of a hotel, and later washing dishes and preparing pastries under the legendary French chef Auguste Escoffier at the Carlton Hotel. Despite the grueling physical labor and long hours, he spent his free hours in public libraries, reading political tracts, learning English, and observing the British labor movement. He began to see that the working class in the heart of the empires suffered from exploitation, just as the colonized peoples did in the provinces. This critical insight began to shift his view from a purely nationalist perspective to a more global, class-conscious understanding of world affairs. In 1917, as the First World War raged across Europe, he returned to France. Paris was a hotbed of political exile, intellectual debate, and wartime anxiety. The young patriot, now using the name Nguyen I Quoc, which translates directly to Nguyen the Patriot, quickly immersed himself in the French political scene. He joined the French Socialist Party, finding a community of left-wing intellectuals who openly criticized French colonial policy. He rented a small, unheated room in the working-class district of Paris, surviving on a meager income from retouching photographs. He spent his nights writing articles for radical newspapers, drafting pamphlets, and organizing the Vietnamese expatriate community. He was no longer just an observer. He was becoming an active participant in the global struggle against imperialism, and the French police began to take notice of his activities. His tiny room at 9 Villa des Gobelins became a meeting place for anti-colonial activists from various parts of the French Empire, turning his humble quarters into a miniature hub of international resistance. The defining moment of his political transformation came in the wake of the First World War. In 1919, the victorious Allied powers gathered at the Versailles Peace Conference to redraw the map of the world. American President Woodrow Wilson had captured the imagination of oppressed peoples everywhere with his famous 14 points, which promised self-determination for nations. Seizing this historic opportunity, Nguyen Quoc, representing a group of Vietnamese patriots, drafted an 8-point petition demanding basic civil liberties for the people of Vietnam. The demands were modest: freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the right to education, and equal treatment under the law. They did not even explicitly demand immediate independence, but rather basic human rights. Dressed in a rented suit, Nguyen Quoc attempted to deliver this petition to the delegates at Versailles. He was systematically ignored. The grand promises of Woodrow Wilson's self-determination were meant only for European nations, not for the colonized populations of Asia and Africa. This rejection was a profound turning point. It shattered any remaining illusions that the Western democracies would ever willingly grant freedom to their colonies. Nguyen Quoc realized that the rhetoric of Western liberalism was a hollow promise designed to maintain the global status quo. Disillusioned but determined, he searched for an alternative. In the summer of 1920, he read Vladimir Lenin's Theses on the National and Colonial Questions, published in the French socialist newspaper L'Humanité. The text was a revelation. While Western socialists focused almost exclusively on the European working class, Lenin argued that the liberation of colonies was essential to the global revolution against capitalism. He offered a concrete, revolutionary methodology for national liberation. For Nguyen Quoc, this was the missing piece of the Da puzzle. He later recalled that he wept with joy in his small room, shouting aloud as if addressing a crowd, "Dear martyrs, compatriots, this is what we need. This is the path to our liberation." In December 1920, at the historic Tours Congress of the French Socialist Party, a dramatic split occurred. Nguyen Quoc stood before the assembly and made an impassioned plea, pointing out that the socialists had failed to actively support the colonized peoples. He voted with the radical majority to found the French Communist Party, becoming its first Vietnamese member. He had officially transitioned from a patriotic reformer into a disciplined, international revolutionary, armed with a global ideology. Now, a recognized figure within the international communist movement, Nguyen Quoc's life became a whirlwind of clandestine activity and global travel. In 1923, he was summoned to Moscow, the capital of the newly formed Soviet Union. He studied at the Communist University of the Toilers of the East, where he refined his understanding of Marxist-Leninist theory and met future revolutionary leaders from across Asia. At the 5th Congress of the Communist International in 1924, he spoke out forcefully, criticizing European communist parties for neglecting the colonial struggle. He argued that the revolution in the colonies could not wait for the European working class to act. The colonial peasants were a sleeping giant ready to rise. From Moscow, the Comintern dispatched him to Guangzhou, China. In late 1924, operating under the alias Li Tui, he worked as a translator for the Soviet advisor Mikhail Borodin. Guangzhou was a bustling center of Chinese revolutionary activity and a magnet for young Vietnamese patriots fleeing French repression. Here, he established the Revolutionary Youth League of Vietnam, known as Thanh Nguyen. He organized secret training courses, teaching young recruits how to build underground networks, publish revolutionary literature, and organize workers and peasants. He was building the core leadership that would one day lead the struggle inside Vietnam. The next decade was a test of survival. The French secret police, the Surete, hunted him relentlessly, sentencing him to death in absentia. In 1931, while operating in Hong Kong under the name Tong Van So, he was arrested by the British colonial police. The French government demanded his extradition, which would have meant certain execution. Through a dramatic legal battle led by a sympathetic British lawyer, Francis Henry Lusby, the case reached the Privy Council in London, and he was eventually released. He slipped away into the shadows, spending years in hiding, recovering from tuberculosis, and briefly returning to Moscow. Despite these immense hardships, his focus never wavered. In February 1930, in Hong Kong, he successfully brought together several competing Vietnamese communist factions to form a single, unified Vietnamese Communist Party, later renamed the Indochinese Communist Party. He had created the political instrument necessary to wage a long-term, organized struggle against the French colonial state, ensuring that when the moment of global crisis arrived, the Vietnamese people would be organized and ready to strike. The 30-year journey of Nguyen Quoc is more than a story of personal survival. It is a masterclass in strategic adaptation and global networking. His journey teaches us that local struggles are never truly isolated. To defeat a global empire, one must build a global network. He understood that the French colonial apparatus did not exist in a vacuum. It was supported by international financial systems, geopolitical alliances, and ideological structures. By traveling the world, he identified the weak points in this global system and forged alliances with those who shared his goals, from French socialists to Soviet revolutionaries and Chinese nationalists. He demonstrated that a colonized nation could not win its independence by fighting alone. It had to connect its struggle to the broader currents of world history. Furthermore, his evolution demonstrates the critical importance of intellectual flexibility. He began his journey as a traditional patriot seeking assistance, but he soon realized that relying on the goodwill of foreign powers was a strategic end. He did not simply adopt Western political theories blindly. He adapted them to fit the specific realities of Vietnam. While classical Marxism focused on the industrial working class, he recognized that in Vietnam, the peasantry was the true revolutionary force. He successfully synthesized internationalist ideology with deep-rooted Vietnamese cultural traditions of resistance and communal solidarity. He translated complex political theories into simple, accessible language that ordinary peasants and workers could understand. His long exile also highlights the power of patience and long-term planning. For 30 years, he lived in poverty, moved from country to country, changed his name dozens of times, and faced constant danger of arrest and execution. Yet, he spent this time educating himself, training others, and slowly building an organizational infrastructure. He knew that a successful revolution could not be built overnight on raw emotion. It required disciplined organization, clear ideological alignment, and a deep understanding of the international political landscape. His life became a testament to the idea that the ultimate victory belongs to those who can endure the longest. This legacy of strategic patience, global perspective, and cultural synthesis remains a vital study in how small, oppressed nations can successfully navigate the complex chessboard of international relations to secure their sovereignty and build a lasting, independent nation. In February 1941, a gray-haired man in traditional Nung dress slipped quietly across the Chinese border into the northern province of Chao Bang. He made his way to a remote limestone cave at Pac Bo. He had left his homeland 30 years earlier as a young, inexperienced seeker. He returned as a seasoned international revolutionary, ready to lead his people in a direct struggle for independence. The journey of exploration was over. The final battle for Vietnam's future was about to begin. He had spent 3 decades preparing for this moment, and the network he had built across the globe would soon be put to the ultimate test. Inside that damp cave, he would begin writing the next chapter of Vietnam's history, translating his global experiences into a concrete plan for national liberation. The story of Ho Chi Minh's 30-year journey is a testament to how one individual's determination, intellectual curiosity, and global vision can change the course of history. It reminds us that the struggle for freedom is never just a local event, but a global narrative of human dignity. As he touched the soil of his homeland for the first time in 30 years, he was deeply moved. The world had changed dramatically since 1911, and so had he. The Second World War was raging, and French control over Indochina was crumbling under Japanese pressure. In the quiet of the Pakbo Cave, surrounded by the rugged beauty of the northern mountains, he founded the Viet Minh, a broad national front designed to unite all Vietnamese patriots regardless of social, class, or political ideology. This strategic move was the direct culmination of his 30 years of global observation, combining international revolutionary techniques with a deep appeal to national unity. His return was not just a personal homecoming, it was the spark that would ignite the fire of national independence, leading directly to the declaration of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in 1945. If you want to explore more stories of how Vietnam shaped and was shaped by the global events of the 20th century, make sure to subscribe to our channel. What part of his global journey surprised you the most? Was it his time in Boston, his work in London, or his dramatic escape from Hong Kong? Share your thoughts in the comments below and hit the notification bell so you do not miss our next episode as we dive deeper into the dramatic struggles of Vietnamese history. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.